All right, it is 1 after. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Do a quick introduction.
As John is starting to share here, I will let everyone know that this is being recorded. So we are going to record this and put it up on our YouTube for folks who couldn't make it, or for folks who perhaps want to watch it with someone else later. So
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome to Miami University's October Fireside Cyberchat. Happy Halloween to you all. This is the month we talk about the most, but we do absolutely care about cybersecurity year-round, every day, every month, almost every minute, right? So we want to talk a little bit about that today. Let me shift over to Elizabeth Parsons just for 1 second here.
you know that it's October because I'm talking about Cybermania. We are still, as I said this morning, but for folks who are not on the call this morning, we are still doing our annual Cybermania quiz competition with Ohio University. We are beating them pretty bad right now, but we want to keep it that way. So I highly encourage everyone to get to the website at miamioh.edu/cybermania and take our quiz. Really, it's not about, beating Ohio, I guess. It's more like very important to, put out the notification of cybersecurity awareness, kind of letting people have more access to the vocabulary that they need to know in order to be safe online. So yeah, but help us beat Ohio, please. So that's all for
Thank
me.
you,
Back to John.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And if you have questions, please throw them in the chat. Elizabeth's going to monitor the chat and see if there's any questions we want to pop up. It's up to Helen wants to address them or when she would like to address them. So I'm sure we'll figure that out on the way. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all today to our Fireside Cyber Chat. We are honored to have with us a distinguished expert in the field, Helen Patton. She's a seasoned cybersecurity professional with over 2 decades of experience in managing risk and cybersecurity. She was previously the Chief Information Security Officer at the Ohio State University. She was instrumental in building their program. Her extensive background also includes significant contributions to the financial services industry, where she honed her skills in risk management and cybersecurity governance. She's not only a practitioner, but also an educator and an author in the field of cybersecurity. She's going to have a lot of fun things to talk about today. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Helen.
Awesome. Thanks, John. When John stops sharing, I'm going to share.
My thing is spinning.
It's trying really hard. Let's see where we go. So
Wow.
while I'm waiting to share my screen, let me tell you what I'm going to be talking about and why. So yes, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It also happens to be Digital Estate Planning Month. Bet you all didn't know that. Unless you listen to NPR and you've been hearing the advertisements, don't ask me why. And it's also Halloween, which is the time we talk about ghosts and spooky things. And cyber is spooky. So I'm going to blend that entire Venn diagram of topics. And I'm going to talk today about how do you create a will for all your digital stuff, for all your online stuff. So I'm titled the talk, How to Manage Your Digital Risk. And I'm still waiting for screens to show up. How's everybody else's screen doing? Are we looking locked? It's not just me.
No, it's not just you. I think John is frozen at the moment, but I've given you permission to share. You should be able to share now.
Alrighty, let me see how I can go here. Let's do this. Oh, that
All right.
looks like mine. Hold that thought.
There we go.
So are you seeing a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, just your Zoom window,
Just your Zoom window.
That's
your
all.
browser.
Hang on. Close that. Technology. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Let's try this again.
There we go.
Beautiful.
How's that looking? Good?
Good.
Okay. Give me 1 second because I want to make sure I'm still seeing the chat. All right. Okay. So as I go through this, feel free to throw questions into the chat. I'll keep an eye on it. And if you want to yell out a question, I'm open to that too. Here's what I want to cover today. What is your digital footprint? How do you protect it? How do you plan for that inevitable moment when you're no longer walking this earth? And what other considerations should you be thinking about as you think about planning for your digital risk? I will tell you that when you're planning a security strategy and a security program, we go through the same steps. It's what is our digital footprint? What does the university have? How many assets? What are those assets? What kind of information do we have? What form is it in? Is it physical? Is it paper? Is it a stethoscope? Is it a what is it? And then we get into how do we protect it? And then we get into what happens when something goes wrong, you know. So as we think about your own digital risk as we go through this talk, just know that this is an allegory for running a cybersecurity program at an institution. So this is, I'll pull in things from both perspectives as we go. All right. So when people, and by the way, my husband and I just finished updating our wills, so this is completely top of mind for me. When you think about creating a will, we have a tendency to think about who's going to get a house, who's going to get the car, who's going to get the kids, who's going to get the things, the dogs, the cats, and whatever if things happen, right? But as we've started putting more and more of our stuff online, a lot of the stuff that we own or we have, even if we don't own it, that's considered valuable isn't actually in a physical form anymore. It's in a digital form, right? That includes money. It includes things that are valuable online. For those of you who are into Bitcoin mining, for example, there's stuff. But it can also be images. It can be content, especially if you're a creator of books or thought material. Most of that stuff is stored digitally now. And for those of you who are really into AI, this could be all your AI chat prompts, God help you. So all of the things that we have now that we need to be thinking about from a will perspective may not be traditionally managed in terms of estate planning. And so we're going to think about some of that stuff, right? So what goes into your digital footprint? So we'll call it a digital footprint. What goes into it? First of all, we've got the sort of the obvious things, personal things, your email accounts and so forth. I'm going to jump into each of these topics pretty deeply. I put business on here because a lot of us these days, we have our job, we have our day job, and then we got our side hustles. Everyone's got a side hustle somewhere. And so that comes along with it, some business related things, and we'll talk about that. There's the devices that you use. And then there's the things that I would call life management. And these could be special documents. They could be digital versions of documents. They could be password managers. We'll talk a lot about those. And then we've got some other stuff, right? So as I go through these topics, what I'm going to encourage you to do is to start making a list. Do I have one of those? Do I have one of those? Do I have one of those? Because if you're planning a digital will, you're going to need to think about what you want to have happen to these things when you're not around anymore. I don't know if there's a if there's a nice way to say death, so I'm just going to say death, and let me know if the word death is challenging for you here. So here's some things to think about in the personal realm. Social media is a biggie, right? A lot of us spend time on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. you've got pictures on there, probably. You've got chat stuff on there. You've got event stuff on there. When you shuffle off into the next dimension, what do you want done with this stuff? Do you want it kept? Do you want it memorialized? Do you want it whatevered? Do you want somebody to not see it? I will tell you, I've got a kid who's 25 and they have the social media accounts they tell me about, and they have the social media accounts they don't tell me about. So what happens to those accounts for you, right? All of your pictures. I don't know about you, but if I left all of my my digital photo albums to family and say, pick what you want, like their heads would explode. So what pictures do you want to keep? What pictures do you want them to keep? What pictures does somebody else need to keep? What pictures should never see the light of day ever? Like some things to think about here. Movies and tapes. For those of you who are old enough, I saw an internet meme that said, if you have things on, if you find videotapes that your parents owned in a box in the basement, don't watch them. And I think there might be some truth to that. So think about the things that you have there. But for those of you who collect DVDs and movies and VCRs and Betamax, and if you know what that is, you're as old as I am. For those of you who collect those things, great. What do you do with those things, right? Games. For those of you who are online gamers, do you want your games recorded? Do you want those recorded games memorialized? What happens to your avatars? How do you deal with all of the things, right? Dating apps. What happens to your dating app profile when, you no longer are around and someone's got to dispose of it? What happens to the contacts you've made on those dating apps? What do you want them to know, right? So you may care, you may not. And of course, all of our personal websites. So for those of you who have a website like me, what do you do with that, right? So think about your personal media, personal footprint, which brings us to business. First of all, can I tell you, if you're using your university anything to do personal anything, don't, right? When I was at Ohio State as the CISO, I've told this story before, so apologies if you've heard it. We fished everybody at the university, and we accidentally fished people who had died because we didn't actually pull the right query out of our identity management database. So we fished everybody, who'd ever been at the university with an account ever. And some of the dead people responded, right? And what we realized particularly was our professors emeriti were using their university email addresses for personal use, to get bills to buy football tickets, because it's Ohio State, everyone buys damn football tickets, for whatever, right? Don't do that, because if you die, your family doesn't get any of that stuff back, not automatically. And I'm sure Miami's got a policy around how to handle that. But stuff that happens on university networks, devices, and databases and applications is university data, not your data. So don't do personal stuff on university stuff. Okay, so let's pull that out for a second. But for those of you who have your own side hustles, like I do, I have my own nonprofit company off the side and all of that kind of stuff. You may have things like websites, blogs, intellectual property, domains, those kinds of things that you're going to need to think about. So think about those things. I'm just taking a look at the chat. No fair talking about Legos, by the way. We'll come back to that one. Life management stuff. So this isn't social media, but this is stuff you do online, or your online banking. And by the way, it's not just your bank accounts, it's also your Apple Pay and your Venmos and pick your financial transaction tools of choice. It's all those applications. It's all your health apps, not just your gym apps and not just, Apple Watch, but any kind of health tracking apps, your Oura rings, your whatever you got going on, right? Health stuff, online. Oh, also, by the way, all your online medical records things, right? I've just generically put important documents. We can't get away from having important documents in a digital format now. This could be contracts, it could be insurance policies, it could be pension documents, it could be healthcare, like your insurance, that kind of stuff. Loyalty accounts, we forget these ones. If you're a frequent flyer, if you're a frequent stayer, if you're a frequent shopper, and you have value in those accounts because of your frequent whatever you do, you're going to have to give that to somebody when you die. So thinking about those kinds of things as well. And then just generally your digital subscriptions, you know, what digital newspapers have you signed up for? What digital services have you signed up for? Somebody throw out something that you've subscribed to digitally that you're open for. Call it anything.
You subscribe to that? Substacks.
Okay. Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I'm a WSJ one as well. Anybody else? You get the idea though, right? This isn't just about cutting off payment. This is also, you know, have you interacted with these digital services in a way that there's something lingering out there that you've got going on? Okay, so life management stuff. Finance more in depth. If you've got crypto, what happens to your wallets? Where, you know, how do you transfer those wallets to somebody else? Bank accounts, credit cards, don't forget those. And oh, by the way, most of your bills and stuff are probably paid with a credit card if you have a credit card at all. So thinking about that, and where you're doing online bill payments, right? Something to think about. Here's some other things. We're going to go into these in more detail. Your login information. Who needs to get that when you die so that bills can continue to be paid or accounts can be transferred or whatever, right? Your email accounts. Email. Texting. I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody seeing my texting history ever. And then contact lists even. Who do you want to see who you have in your contact list? Right? Some things to think about. Anybody else got anything digital that I haven't talked about yet? No? Okay. It's pretty comprehensive. I've been asking a lot of people what they have. So I think I covered everything, but there's always someone who's got some weird digital thing that I haven't spoken about. By the way, I had a colleague of mine, her husband died unexpectedly, and he was the IT guy in the family, and he ran their home network. The home network had 60 nodes on it. For those of you who tech geeky, like that's a pretty damn big home network, including 12 Raspberry Pis. And she's like, what the hell do I do with a Raspberry Pi? And I've got 12 of them. And what was he using them for? Like, yeah. And yeah, so there's always somebody with something going on. I haven't even talked about AI apps or anything like that, but let's add those to the list. Your friendly chat bot that you run for yourself, I'm not here to judge, but yeah, David, 60s is abnormally big for a home network. Yeah, all the IoT stuff for sure. Oh, yeah, let's not forget your Amazon Home Assistants. Hey, Siri, all of those things. It's a thing too. Oh, sorry, my phone just decided to respond. Hate Siri. So how do you protect it? The first thing, two-factor authentication. So all of these things that you've got, this is the instructive part of the talk. If you have not been told that you need 2FA, MFA, multi-factor authentication, however you call it, I am here telling you you need it. I'm sure everybody else has already told you that. You need multi-factor authentication everywhere you log in. I'm not kidding. We used to say, just put it on the really important stuff. And now we're sharing so much in sort of a cross-dimensional way. It's really hard to decide what's not important anymore. Multi-factor everywhere is the rule of the day, okay? But where you have higher risk, use better risk factors. Passcodes are your friend, for sure. Biometrics are your friend. SMS is highly hackable, right? So put SMS somewhere where you don't care so much, not email, which is the same place where you get all your password reset emails, by the way. Email is probably your highest value target. Don't put SMS multi-factor on email. Okay, so use an authenticator app rather than SMS if you don't have passkeys. Okay, passkeys. Passkeys are your friend. Get to know passkeys. All right. Don't share passkeys, please, if you can help it. There's always a use case that like blows out the rule, right? So I recognize somebody here would say, but I got this use case where it's really important that I share passkeys. You do you, that's fine. But for the bulk of the consumer world, there is no purpose in sharing passkeys. So there's that. I debated whether I should put password manager first because ahead of MFA. So these are in order of importance in Helen's brain, by the way. Yeah, banks that offer SMS as the only MFA option are very annoying to me too, Aaron. I just want to say that. Do better. Demand your vendors do better. I think let's call that the takeaway of the talk. Demand your vendors do better. But have a password manager. Have a password manager. Why? One of the biggest risks to our personal accounts is password stuffing and people being able to, however they do it, hack your password and get your password. If you reuse your password, the likelihood that they will try your passwords in multiple places once they have a password is really high, right? So you want to have a unique password everywhere you log in. That's too much for one brain to remember. And I don't want you writing it down places. And I don't want you reusing the same password because that's easy to remember. So you use a password manager. So the only password you have to remember is the password to the password manager. And then the password manager creates a strong, unique, hard to remember password that you don't have to remember. Does that make sense? So password managers exist to make your life easier, actually. Yes, please have a separate password manager for work and home. Separate, separate, separate. I will tell you, here at Cisco, we had a situation where an individual was using a Chrome browser and the digital keychain on the Chrome browser to store all the passwords. This is a poor man's version of a password manager. Don't use your browser as your password manager. Note to self, right? They were using this at home. His account was compromised at home. He had put a Cisco account into his personal password manager. And they used the Cisco account that was in the personal password manager to break into Cisco. Don't put work accounts in your personal. And for the same reason where I said don't put personal stuff into work, don't put personal stuff into work. For the same reason, because there is risk in both directions, but also if something happens to you, you can't get at that password if you're no longer an employee of the university, okay? So don't share. One password allows you to have one application that has a vault for Miami and a vault for your personal accounts, okay? So you can use the same password manager, but within it, you can have separate vaults, one personal and one work, and that's fine, okay? All good to go. Any other, you can tell I'm sort of keeping an eye on the chat. Any other questions or comments about password managers? Yeah. And by the way, Jeff, I will be talking about cell phones and what to do when you die, because a lot of us use cell phones as our second factor, right? So what do you do with that? So we'll talk about that too. Backups. Number 3, backups. Here's the thing about backups. Backing up to the cloud and only the cloud is okay, but still sort of risky. So when you're thinking backups, I want you to think about a cloud version, a local version to whatever device you use the most. So it's on that device, laptop, desktop, phone, iPad, whatever, and an offline version. So just like spring cleaning, clocks go forward, clocks go back, daylight saving time is when you do your spring cleaning, fall cleaning, whatever. A couple of times a year, make a backup of your stuff and then get it off your PC, get it off your laptop, stick it in a safe, preferably somewhere, or in a safe place, so that you've got at least a copy, particularly for those things that are really sentimental to you. A lot of the transactional things that we do online can get recreated because lots of the bank or whatever has a copy of it too. But the things that are uniquely yours, like photos and that kind of stuff, make sure that you're making an offline copy of it, and pretty regularly. Because if you have an offline copy of it and then it's 10 years old, chances are that technology has changed and you won't be able to get data off whatever you stored it off in an offline version. Okay. So some things to think about. Backups. It's the thing. Oh, and by the way, test that you can restore from backup. Please, 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 please. Okay. This is a sort of a risk avoidance tactic. Only keep the stuff you need, right? So in the same way, we've all got family members who are hoarders. And I mean that both in a general sense, but also in a clinical sense. You know these people, right? And you're like, oh my God, if I ever had to clean up after these people, I would poke my eyes out because they've got so much stuff. We've got this problem in the digital space, but worse, because digital stuff can accumulate and you don't actually see it, right? So think about all the stuff you have, the apps that you have on your phone that you actually don't use anymore, but you've never got around to cleaning out. The photos that are, you know, you've got 100 photos of that really pretty butterfly that blew by last spring because it doesn't cost you anything to take a photo anymore. So you have 100 copies of everything. Get rid of some of that stuff, right? If you don't need it, don't keep it. And that way it can't get stolen or lost. But also, if you've got to decide what to do with it after you're dead, somebody else doesn't have to go through 100 photos, right? So do the Marie Kondo thing and yeet everything you don't need, okay? All right. So let's say you've worked out what you've got and you've protected it all. What do you do? What do you do? You've really got sort of four options. One is just, you're like, I'm dead. I don't care. Just delete everything. There are some people who are like that. That makes it very easy. Don't care. Sell all the devices, delete all the data. I'm dead. I don't need it anymore. Good. Fine. Completely valid. On the other hand, we've got people who are, no, everything I've got is very important for posterity. I'm an important person. History will thank you. I want you to keep everything. That's the other extreme. Forgive me, I think you're crazy if that's you, but you do you, that's fine. This is your choice. So in between then, what are your options? You can let somebody decide, like, I'm dead, I don't care, you choose, right? And we usually do this to the people we love the most, which are our family members. And then you've got, well, I'm going to help those folks and I'm going to leave instructions on what to do with everything. And you can tell I'm going to be talking to you about how do you leave instructions and how do you try and help people, okay? So these are your options though. So if you're the delete everything person or the keep everything person or the I'm going to let somebody else decide person, you can put me on mute for the next, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, and I'm going to keep talking and you don't have to care. That's fine. You won't hurt my feelings. All right. Here's the thing. If you're going to leave detailed instructions, I want you to think about classifying what you've got in 3 ways. One is automatically delete this thing, right? Let's use email as an example. Let's say you've got a personal Gmail account. It's where all your conversations happen with your family. This is where all your banking information and all of that kind of stuff comes and goes. This is your personal transactional email account. What things in there once you're dead, you're dead. Nobody cares. You know you don't care. You would like people not even to read it because it might be mildly embarrassing if the family actually sees some of the stuff you've written. And you would just want to tell them, delete it. Fine. Okay. It's not important or it's super private. You want to tell them to delete it. Or Maybe it's something that's super important that they're going to need. And again, this could be financial information, health information, your digital will instructions. It could be something like that. So important things you need. And then this third category of it's sort of sentimental, right? It might be something that your mom wants. It might be something that your kids would be interested in, right? So think about that. If you've got an email that's like that, you can set up tags, which is not the same things as folders, but you can set up tags that just say, delete this, sentimental, keep this. And then when you're gone and somebody has to decide what to do with your stuff, you've given them a head start. Okay, something to think about. So leave those instructions. Here's some things to think about too when you're dead. Who do you want to tell? Like the old sort of put an obituary in the newspaper thing is certainly valid, but most people don't read newspapers anymore. You've got this whole digital contact list that you may or may not have decided to share. What do you want them to know? What do you want put on your Facebook page or your Instagram profile or your TikTok account, right? Again, you might go, I don't care, I'm dead. But you might go, this is what I'd like people to know. Or this is what I'd like these people to know because they're close personal friends versus here are my 10,000 LinkedIn followers and this is what I'm going to put on my LinkedIn page, right? So thinking about your audiences. You may want to transfer ownership from stuff, right? So if you've got a professional website, especially those academics who've got your own website with your own academic work on it, just because you die doesn't mean your work goes away, right? So what do you want done with this stuff? So thinking about that, you may want to name someone as a digital executor of your estate, which is different than the person who is the executor of how to get, your house and car transferred over. Someone who knows how to work with digital stuff could be a good thing if you're going to have a digital will. Okay. So here's the process you would follow if you were going to prep your digital will. 1, you inventory your stuff. 2, you decide how you want it handled. 3, if you still have work and personal stuff combined, now is the time to pull it apart. Okay. 4, get rid of the stuff you don't need. 5, identify who you want to handle the stuff. And just like a medical power of attorney, you pick a digital power of attorney as somebody who knows digital stuff would be useful. 6, you tag the stuff according to your wishes. 7, you make a hard copy and a soft copy of your instructions, right? And then you give people that copy. Okay? You all following me so far? Any questions on that, by the way, before I jump off this one? Yeah. All right. Here's some things that make this difficult. Using a password manager is a great place to inventory all the digital stuff you have, by the way. So password managers are not just good for creating new passwords, but instead of you having to create a manual list of all the digital things you have, you just point somebody at your password manager and say, here's all the IDs and passwords and how to get into all the stuff that I have. But you've got to give them access to your digital password manager to do that. Do you trust them? Do you trust them? Right? So 1Password, for example, does have a way of you pre-identifying who you would want to have access to that vault, not the whole Miami employee thing, but your personal vault in 1Password. And other password managers have something similar, right? But the people that you're going to give access to need to know how to get into that tool. So you're going to want to try and maybe practice with them, show them what the app looks like, where to find things in the app, that kind of thing, right? How you've got it organized within the password manager app itself. You may not be comfortable giving your master password to somebody else. And one of the drawbacks of 1Password and other password managers is they don't yet have a thing that notifies you when somebody logs into your vault with the master password. It's a feature we would like them to add. I'm sure they will add it soon, but some of these things are a bit of a problem, right? So at a minimum, what you might do is write down the password to your password vault and put it somewhere safe offline and tell someone where to go find it. Like it might be how you have to manage that, okay? But do leave instructions on where your password manager is, how to find it. Pick a password manager that's both mobile and can get picked up on a web page, so that they can log in using their own browsers and stuff, and they don't need your cell phones to be able to get at it, okay? Which brings me to, a lot of us use our phones as our second factor, right? And that's a problem. And if you're dead and you died in a car crash, chances are your phone went with you, right? What does this mean? What does this mean? It means that you need to find backup MFA ways of getting into your accounts. So password manager that is accessible on a website, so you don't need to get to it on a phone. If you're using an authenticator app like Google Authenticator or Duo or one of those apps, that's great. But hardware tokens, YubiKeys, and that kind of thing can make a really good backup way of getting into it. Or you might just have set somebody's, I know I said don't use phone numbers and SMS because they're not that secure, that's fine, but maybe you have it as a backup mechanism for each of your accounts. So as you're thinking about your bank accounts or your social media accounts or whatever, and it says what MFA factors do you have, maybe you set up your digital executor's phone number as a backup factor, so they don't need your phone, they don't need a token, and so forth, right? Something to think about. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. Go talk to your lawyer about stuff like this. You've got to remember your digital assets have value to someone, probably. So go talk to a lawyer about how to call this in. There are some applications and digital assets and so forth where you can name somebody as the executor for you as an advanced directive, but sometimes you actually do need to name that person in a will itself. Okay, so go talk to a lawyer if you have any questions about anything you've got. Here's a fun one to think about. Here's a fun one to think about. As AI is improving, one of the use cases that has been talked about is taking all the digital exhaust that you exhume onto the internet on a daily basis in your chats, in your LinkedIn profiles, in your emails. Let's pull that all together, create an avatar using AI of your face, and then your family can talk to you forever. Wouldn't that be great? Would you like to talk to your mom for forever? Really? Really? Some people would. I love my mom. I don't really want to talk to her forever. But these are now choices that you may want to make, right? You know, it could be a thing. You decide. Yeah, I personally find it a little creepy, but this is also because it's new. There's going to be a time in the future where somebody says, hey, for a fee, we can suck up all your dead loved ones' digital life and we can turn it into somebody for you. And if you haven't said to your loved ones, don't do that, they might. So something for you to think about. All right. So what's next? So coming away from this, where do you go? If you want to create a digital will, and by the way, there's been plenty of people have said to me, Helen, you're overthinking this. You're going to die one day. Just die. It's fine. We'll work it out. But I've been on the receiving end of a parent who hasn't taken care of this kind of stuff. I've had friends who've been on the receiving end of children, unfortunately, who haven't taken care of this stuff. And then as they've gone through somebody's digital life, they've found stuff they've had to burn their eyeballs out of. And don't put people in this situation if you can avoid it, right? So inventory your stuff, right? make sure the stuff is secure, and then use the tools you're using to secure the stuff, like password managers and MFA, to make sure that you can then transfer management of this stuff to somebody else after you're gone. Do have a plan for that. Be instructive. It's okay if your plan just says delete everything. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But if it's a little more nuanced than that, give those instructions. Your people will thank you. And you've got to set up a habit to go back and revisit this every 6 months or so. Okay, so unfortunately, it's like getting the tires rotated on your car or changing the batteries in your smoke detectors. You've now got something else to think about every 6 months or so. So what's all of this got to do with security at a university? I'm going to go back to it. What John and the rest of the security team do is they inventory your stuff. They enforce security practices based on how much you care about this stuff, right? So they're following your risk tolerances and your risk appetite to design a security program. They then plan what they're going to do when the balloon goes up, right? And then they practice it and they refine it and they repeat it. So everything that we've talked about today is a microcosm of what it's like to run security at the university, which is what it's like to run security in any organization. So hopefully you've got a little bit of a sense of, you know, what every security geek goes through as they're trying to secure the university. So with that, I'm going to open it up for some questions.
Hey, Helen, John here.
Hey.
Thank you so much. My question, I guess, is it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of we have so much out there, so much we don't even know about. That undertaking all that things, sure, it's a lot to secure a university and do all the things you just said, and then to do that with the multitudes of data, and everybody's got the iCloud storage somewhere, and they've got the Google storage somewhere. That little cost $1, for so many gigabytes, and you bought a long time ago, and you have stuff from 15 years ago in there. So it sounds easy to inventory that, but any recommendations on how to segment or time-base that, time block that, so you can attack it so it's manageable?
Yeah. You're right. It's an elephant of a task, and you can't eat the elephant in one bite. It's hard for me to sort of put an estimation around how much time stuff will take, because it depends on everybody's individual circumstances. My recommendation, but this is me with a very sort of ordered brain, and not everybody has an ordered brain. My recommendation is to go through each of those sections just one at a time. So pick your social media accounts, for example, first, and say, okay, I've got an Instagram account, a TikTok account, and a Facebook account. What do I want done with those? If it's just delete it, most of those social media platforms have instructions that you can leave now that says, if I don't log in for 6 months, send an email to this person and validate that I'm actually dead. And if they say yes, then delete all of my stuff, right? So most of the online providers are starting to allow you to do this. Gmail, for example, you can name somebody as the person who could take over your account if you haven't logged in for 6 months, right? So there's stuff like that you can do now. So like you can bite off big chunks of this pretty quickly, but you've just got to be intentional about going through all of these lists. I actually find that what I've been doing as I've been going through it is I've just been getting rid of stuff. Like I had a Dropbox account that somebody had set me up in a previous life that I've got to, and I've sort of got stuff in there, but do I really need it? No. So I cleaned it out and I deleted it, and now no one has to worry about it, including me. So good job, me. It's stuff like that, really, that you just got to chip away at it. And if you find, by the way, because I'm in this boat, I've got 4 different email accounts right now. Do I really need 4? Really? Right. So I am all about just cleaning stuff up so you don't have to think about it at all and then deal with what's left. Yeah.
As you were saying that, it popped in my head that just getting started with the inventory is probably a really great start, just to try to, oh, that's right, I do have that, or
Yep.
I do have that, and
Yep.
maybe trying to capture that, like you said, in a document or a password manager or somewhere, so you just have that awareness first.
Yep.
That'd be a huge win, as it is at a university, right? Just getting an inventory of our software and hardware assets would be a great thing to do as well.
Be a great thing to do. I will tell you, this is where ChatGPT or Copilot is your friend. Just go in and put in a prompt and say, I am this kind of person. In my case, I'm a middle-aged white woman who occasionally dabbles in technology. Give me a checklist for creating a digital will, and see what it comes back with. It's going to be pretty on point, actually. So
Great idea.
yeah. Other questions?
I have a question on password managers.
Yes.
So password managers can store a lot of things that aren't passwords,
Yes.
whether it's credit card numbers, all that. Is it a good idea to use them for that, or is that too much stuff in one spot?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the question is the benefit of storing non-passwords in a password manager worth the single point of failure risk?
Right.
Yeah. For me, I would say the answer is no, because the password manager I have has lots of built-in redundancy, right? So as a one password manager user, there's local options, it's in the cloud, I can get to it from any device. So the likelihood, other than 1Password, the company going under, right? By the way, if you're a 23andMe customer, you better be cleaning out your genetic data. Let's not forget your genetic data that's now digitally available. Different topic. I think in general, it's safe. It's safer to do that than to keep some of those sensitive things like passwords or driver's license information or whatever else you've got going on in a clear text form in a Google Cloud, right? So yeah, I think in some ways it's probably the risk is worth the reward. The reward is worth the risk to do that, for sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Other questions?
I suspect you've been through the higher ed CISO faculty member dies and it's a mess scenario. Could you tell a story about maybe a worst case scenario that you saw and what the pain points were, just so that people can kind of get their heads wrapped around what that looks like?
Yeah. So I had more than one situation at Ohio State where a faculty member passed away. It was mostly faculty. Occasionally it happened with staff too. So we keep, I'm not just lobbing grenades at faculty. Faculty seem to be more likely to use university resources for personal information. I don't know if that's anecdotal or factually correct, but in my experience, that seems to be the case. And we have had situations where somebody passed away. The person in the relationship who paid all the bills, and they were having all the bills notices go through their email address, their university email address. And the way it worked at the time, I haven't been at OSU now for 3 years, so they may have changed it. But at the time, what would happen is that when we got notice that somebody had passed away, the person's email account was frozen, and any devices that they had, we would have got back and that kind of stuff. Because the executor process of processing their will took about 6 months. By the time the family had legal access to any of the person's information. It had been 6 months. So they were already in a situation where some bills had not been paid, power had been turned off at the house, things like that. But then there was a lot of sentimental stuff that was on that person's. So the IT team, because of course, after 6 months, we'd already got rid of the PC and their file shares and that kind of stuff. We had to go back to previous versions of backups looking for some of this data, which we didn't legally have to do because, you all sign a user acceptance agreement that says work stuff is for work stuff, not really for personal stuff, right? But we tried to do it anyway, and the family wasn't able to recover everything that they wanted to recover because we just didn't have it anymore. So, I feel sorry for people who are in that situation, but that's some of the stuff that happens on a pretty regular basis. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? By the way, I didn't intend for this whole session to be like a big advertisement for 1Password. The right password manager for you is really going to depend on the kinds of devices you have at home, how many family members are going to be sharing. I am all about sharing a password vault, even if you don't share a pass key, by the way. If you're wondering, if you don't have a password manager and you're wondering what the best one is, while certainly you can get a freebie from Miami to use a 1Password vault if you need it, there is a consumer report that comes out every year that talks about the best password managers and for what purpose, right? So if you're an Android user, what's the best? If you're an Apple family, what's the best? If you're a mixed environment, if you've got kids, if you've got older folks, you get the idea. So go look at consumer reports and they will give you a side-by-side comparison in terms of features and costs, and you can work that one out. Anything else not necessarily related to this topic other than cybersecurity that anyone has that I can answer?
What's your biggest fear with AI and cybersecurity?
AI and cybersecurity. I'm not particularly worried about it. I know there's a lot of chatter in the industry that says our adversaries will use AI to attack us better. My perspective on this is they're doing a fine job without AI. And AI costs money, both in terms of hardware and software and training. And if they don't need to use it, why use it? Because we click on shit on a pretty regular basis without having AI involved. So I'm actually a little less worried about that. To be honest, at this exact moment in time, the thing that worries me about AI from a cybersecurity perspective is that all the VC funding is going to AI that used to go to cybersecurity. And so I think we'll see some decline in the product market around solutions for cybersecurity, unless the cybersecurity solution includes AI. Now, there are certainly, I think, ethical questions around algorithmic bias and so forth that I personally worry about around AI, but I'm not sure I'd classify that as a cybersecurity problem. But I think we all probably have concerns around stuff like that, perhaps. So, yeah. I will tell you the customer base that I deal with right now in my role at Cisco is state, local, and education. Our state governments, our federal officials, our local officials are very worried about deep fakes. Deep fakes are a big concern from a government perspective at the moment. So watch this space. There's a lot going on in terms of trying to use AI to identify deep fakes. So it'll be spy versus spy in an AI world, is how I put it. It'll be great.
I agree that you're cybersecurity is being completely overshadowed by AI and in articles and presentations at conferences, and grant interests.
Yes.
And
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But we continue on, right? It's not like cybersecurity has generically been well resourced in the past. So nothing really changes in that regard. It's fine. But cybersecurity isn't the end goal, right? It's a trusting community is sort of the end goal of having a cybersecurity program. So maybe there's other ways to get at it than cyber. We'll see. I think we only have a couple of minutes left. John, I'm going to hand it back to you, and just in case there's housekeeping or anything like that, or Elizabeth.
great. Thank you so much, Helen, for such an insightful presentation. Digital footprints, protecting our digital assets, digital estate planning, figuring out who our executor should be, finding out where our stuff is and what we should do about it. Opens a lot of eyes, opened my eyes, and gives us, I think, some really important things to be thinking about as we move forward and as we create new accounts. It's, start thinking about, hey, don't forget, I got to keep track of this new thing. This new account for Target or Facebook or whatever it is. So thank you for that. I look forward to applying these practices myself. And Ken, thank you. And we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to put this talk together and to share your experience and thoughts with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who joined us. Really great to see you, and we'll see you around the campus.